Good evening, guys. Monday, the 4th of May. Apologies for being a little bit late. I was actually just doing another video and yeah, time ran on because I know I like to talk and be talking about nutrition. I'm good at that. So, gonna get into this live this evening. If you've got any questions or any comments as I go along, please just bob them in. And yes, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition just because there's never not a good time to just emphasize the principles and encourage you just to stay on track. And that doesn't have to be heavy and it doesn't have to be difficult. It's just remembering what those principles are. So as you pop up, I'll try and say hello and press the little wave button. Hi Jazz. Hi Lizzie. So nutrition principles, keeping it simple is my kind of mantra. I hope that comes across. And the three principles I like to focus on are two main ones and one kind of extra one just to keep everything concise is number one, calorie intake. Now that can go up and down, and it probably is going to go up and down. Evening Deborah, hello Richard. And that calorie intake has to be consistent and at the right level for a goal. Now, a lot of you watching this have had calorie level set by me, macro set by me. That's not to say it doesn't change over time, but as long as we're getting that right calorie level consistent to our goal, then over time that's going to work. Now, it's not as straightforward as black and white as that, but that's why I've done different videos about the menstrual cycle, and I've got a new system to produce videos with visuals as well now. So I'm going to be doing another concise one, and then I'll be emailing it out, particularly to the ladies, because I know guys, you don't always want to hear about the menstrual cycle and what's going on, but it's interesting to me, I know, and also useful sometimes to know about it, so you can support your significant other with these things. Talking to you, Richard, because you're watching. Anyway, so that number one nutrition principle, calories intake, getting that energy balance right overall. Then protein level to support your recovery, support your physiological systems of cell repair, muscle growth, all those different things that are going on. A lot of people undereat on protein, and I know I probably sound like I bang on about protein all the time. It's definitely not the be all and end all. It's just having it in mind to get up to that right sort of level. Ladies, roughly on your calorie intakes, it's going to be around about 120 grams a day, which actually when you break it down, that's 4 lots of 30 grams, 3 to 4 good portions of protein, plus the other protein that comes in other food. You're going to be not far away from that at all. Then carbohydrates and fats, really important for energy. We don't want to demonize any of those food groups. We want to have those in the right balance as well. But the personal preference is what can make those up. How your body feels and runs better, what you like to eat, what you like to cook, those sorts of things, what's easy to grab sometimes. So on certain days, you might have a high carbohydrate intake just because it was much easier to make a sandwich for lunch. On another day, you might have a lower carbohydrate intake and make up from fats because you had a tuna salad for lunch. That's just a couple of examples, and it just means up or up and down. The key thing for me is have some sort of tracking system, have some sort of idea of what you're actually eating. Now, MyFitnessPal is a good app. I encourage people to use that. Bit of pen and paper, every so often, might be a good way of doing it. Whatever system you use, if you are kind of sticking to it and it's sustainable, keep using that system. Something like MyFitnessPal, you might only have to use for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then you can take a little break from using it all the time and have a kind of go at, am I eating the right sort of things now? I've got that bit more knowledge. It's always there to jump back onto. You don't have to be beholden to these things. It's also making it fit into your life and your lifestyle. Some of us have got a little bit more time at the moment because of social distancing and isolation to do more tracking. And that's possibly a great time to understand a little bit more about food intake, macros, what helps you hit your protein, what helps you hit your calories, what has the opposite effect, what things do we pick up and grab without thinking that bob those calories up a little bit too high, and then we're struggling to meet our goals because our overall calorie intake is too high. So remember, calories are the key. That's getting the energy balance right. Then protein intake, and then carbohydrates and fats to suit you. And then something I don't often talk about probably enough is things like alcohol. They're all right as long as they're all tracked in. Now, the downside is on MyFitnessPal particularly, it doesn't count. It counts the calories in alcohol, but doesn't count it as a macronutrient because alcohol is a separate macro. So it doesn't appear in those columns of protein, carbohydrates and fats when you add it in, but it will knock it off your calories. So that's all right, just have to bear that in mind. And if you're kind of noting things down, it's good to have an idea that actually alcohol has 7 calories per gram. Now, that's not to say that in a whole drink, the amount, the total volume, is all alcohol. It's not. But something like gin or vodka, a clear spirit, is mainly the alcohol part and water and the flavouring. So that's why the calories in something like that are going to be much lower than something like a real ale, a beer, or wine that have more ingredients, particularly those that are fermented and turned into sugars. That's where you get your flavour from. They're going to have more calories. It's not to say don't have anything. It's just to say actually having this awareness helps to plan and work towards the goals that we've got, be that fat loss, health, even adding size and muscle by eating into a surplus. You know, we need to know what we're eating to be able to actually track a little bit about what's happening. And if we're looking at weight loss and fat loss, are we working in the right direction with our calories to actually elicit that response? So that's what we're talking about there. Okay, what I really want to talk about today is touching on what I put in the daily focus, that 1% better, talking about progression. And it's not to say that progress and progression, particularly in training and exercise, has to be a kind of all-out grunting effort every single time we do something. I'm not talking about that at all. I've been in that place and enjoyed it at the time, but that's not for everyone. And that's because we're all different and we all do enjoy different activities as well. But we're talking about getting that element of progression as we go along, step by step, day by day, as we're doing the different activities that we want to do. So if we take some of the MW Fitness online workouts, for example, I do a lot of them for time. Clearly I'm not talking about the stretch workout here, although I can actually put element of progression into that as well. We're talking about, can we go and do one extra squat in that 30-second set? Can we do a little bit of a longer hold before we need to take a break in a plank position? Can we do a little bit of more of a squeeze into our crunches? Those are just examples. We're talking about that little element of progression, and it might not be to do more and it might not be to go faster. It's just making steps of progression in form, technique, how we're carrying out the exercises. That is progression, and that's what is going to move us forward. Similarly, low level exercise in terms of, say, walking or cycling or whatever it is that you might be able to do at this time of social distancing. If you go a little bit further, that's progression. If you do the same route as you did last week, a little bit quicker, that's progression. If on a day you get 200 extra steps and you keep that going for the next week and then add a few more steps on top of that, then that's progression. And that's what we're doing with the listen and lunge little extra section I've put into MW Fitness Online. Probably launched it without too much of a introduction really. I just put one video up to introduce it, and another video up to start it off. You know, I love lunges in a kind of weird kind of way. I just think they're very therapeutic. They're very good for our movement. The reason being is if you think about the lunge pattern, it's actually it's this emphasized walk stride or running stride. So everything that happens in a lunge is the mechanics that we need to move around. But we're overemphasizing them. We're increasing the range of movement. We're increasing the muscle lengthening. We're increasing the contraction, and we're increasing the tension that's going on. So within a lunge, we're going to actually get therapeutic benefits to hips, knees, ankles, lower back, glutes, as we're moving through doing the lunges. What we have got to do though, and I've said this in the introduction video to lunge and listen, is do the right variation and the right sets and reps for you. Now, I used to do up to 400 walking lunges a day without stopping. I used to literally go outside the house here, start outside, go up, around and across 3 streets, and it's a slight incline. Did that for quite a long time, every morning, and the benefits were ridiculous in terms of my lower body conditioning and for the stresses I was putting it through at the time with cycling to work, the training that I was doing. I really believe it kept me really healthy in terms of my lower body mechanics and how all my joints was working, and also was a good calorie burn without too much stress on the body. So I'm not going to be going and doing that many straight off the bat now. We're talking, I'm going to probably do 80 to 100 at a time. And what I'm aiming for is to do it 5 days a week out of 7, being realistic about how many we can actually do. It's great having these daily challenges, but if we can't stick to them, then it becomes maybe a little stress. I haven't done that today, or it just, you get switched off from it. So what I'm suggesting is 5 days across 7 of lunges, even if that's got to be 3, if that's got to be 4, absolutely fine. You know, we're aiming for starting off at the right level for you and doing the right lunge variation as well. It might be that doing 3 or 4 sets of 10 reverse lunges separate to your workout of the day or separate to your exercise of the day is the right starting point for you. That could be great. It could be one day that the weather's really awful, so you do just forward lunges in place. Some of you guys that are more advanced and a little bit fitter, yes, you could do walking lunges on the street, on the side of the canal, over on a playing field that's close to where you are. If you've got to take the dog out, that's a good time to do them as well. Finley does get a bit excited and thinks, what's he doing again? He's doing this crazy thing again. That's absolutely fine. You know, we just got to work these into the day. So that's what I'm saying with these lunges is get the right number to aim at for this week, the right number of sets to break it into, the right variation, and then want to add 10 or 20 a week depending on your starting point. So if your starting point is up there, right up there, then say you're doing 100 walking lunges a day. Next week, I want you to do 120. But you might break them into sets of 20 anyway. So you might do 20, walk just normally a little bit, back into your 20. If you're doing those walking lunges at home, so you're doing those just a lunge variation at home, in your lounge, you might want to do 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, 4 or 5 times this week on different days. Then on the other days, next week, we're going to up it to 12 or 16 in those sets, but keep this number of sets the same. So we've increased and progressed the number. See where I'm going with this? So we're looking for that bit of progression and that bit of increase steadily across the month. So if we're taking this as a month challenge, I've got another challenge for next month, but we might just keep doing the lunges as well. You know, see if it fits in nicely to your routine, there's no reason to stop doing it when we add something else. So what we're looking at then is just that increase across the month. So actually if we add 20 a week, for someone who's doing the walking lunges, you'd be up to maybe 160, 180 into the 4th week. If you're doing sets at home, forward or reverse lunges to suit you, by the end of that 4th week, you might be doing sets of 20, 3, 4 sets of 20. It's getting the right variation, the right number, and looking for that progression, which is why it always is for MW Fitness is perform, transform. If your performance gets better at what you're doing, your body will have to change to kind of keep up with what you're asking it to do. It's a stimulus and an adaptation effect, and that's what training is. So training is really 2 things. It's to drive a little bit more of a calorie output. If we're in a calorie deficit, particularly for weight loss and fat loss, that's why we add training in. It's also a stimulus for the body to change. Now, if we're in a deficit, the stimulus is to maintain your muscle, maintain strength, maintain mobility and flexibility. If you're in a surplus for muscle building, the stimulus is there to increase that potential to muscle build. You can't just eat food and put on muscle. You need to create a stimulus in the body. We're just getting the right stimulus at the right level, the right intensity for where you're at now, but we need to look for that progression. The body is amazing at going into what's called homeostasis. It's really good at staying the same. The body wants to stay the same. It feels safe, it feels comfortable. We've got to take it 1 degree, 1% out of its comfort zone to get that little bit of change. You know, and over time, that 1% becomes 5%. So if we take it 1% out of its comfort zone for 3 times of exercise over 2 weeks, we've actually taken it in total 6% out of its comfort zone. If you exercise 5 days a week and get that little tiny extra progression 5 times, that's 5%. If you add to that the next week, from where you started to where you finish in 4 weeks, you might have added 20% more stimulus. That's not 20% more press-ups necessarily, or it could be. If you start at 10 and you add 2 a week, and in a pace of time you end up at 18 or 20 press-ups, actually you have added those percentages. If it goes from 10 to 20, you've done a 100% increase. That's pretty crazy. If over a month you do two press-up increase, like in the fitness tests, that is 20% of an increase on what you're doing. So that's what we're looking for, is those little tiny steps, those 1% steps of progression and increase into what you're doing. I hope that makes sense. And that's why we do things like fitness tests. It's why I encourage people that I work with to do measurements, not just on the scales, and I mean body measurements physically with a tape measure, because the changes might be going on that we can't necessarily see. We might be able to perform better, which is good. That's the fitness test. Our bodies might be changing, shape might be changing, arms, legs, neck, chest, hips, all those things. Those measurements might be changing. Slowly, granted, it's a steady process, but if we're not checking at all, we don't know. That's why photos are also great, because you might think, do you know what, nothing's happened. Your friend might say to you, oh yeah, you're looking really good. You might think, oh, I don't really think I've changed. Do a photo, and I know we're all really actually self-critical. We don't like doing them. I don't like doing them because I'm really self-critical. But it helps it just to, over time, visualize those changes. You know, I used last week 4 different examples of transformations of different people to just show what is possible, even including now during this time of social distance and isolation. People are still getting great results, and you know, just by following the principles of the right amount of calories and putting the training with it. And those different stories there was some actual, you know, similarities in that they've got the calories right, they've done the right sort of training for their body type and their physical starting point. You know, I've worked with Sharon for a long time in kind of 2 different stages, and you know, she'd gone from being really athletic, really strong, mobile, to having the actual health issues that she has. But even then, she was able to start and progress, and I'm talking like massive progression, from barely being able to walk up the stairs to fully getting back into her training to a degree that, you know, I was, you know, inspired by it myself. She was, really happy with where we got to over time, and it was steady away, 2-3 sessions a week, starting just doing movements, stretches, getting things working, having things in a line, just using the machines at the gym, because you had to really isolate the muscles and not put pressure on the joints. And we all start at different places, and you know, that's what it's about, is that progression forward. And sometimes that means changing the exercise, sometimes that just means aiming to do that a little bit more, and that is all we're looking for with this 1% progression. So that's why I wanted to come and talk about training tonight, because it doesn't have to be big, overblown, kind of massive efforts where we're absolutely wiped out. Actually, that's probably what we don't necessarily want that. I love HIIT training, but we want to overemphasize going too hard day to day. We want to be able to go at a nice level, maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 on certain days, but saving that little bit in the tank for that consistency to move across day to day. It would be great if we could all perform at a massive optimal level every single time we go to the gym. You know, even top athletes can't do that. They're having to train and recover. They're having to get the nutrition right. You know, they're taking days and weeks off at a time. When they're not training, professional athletes are usually recovering. You know, rugby players, particularly, as an example I know about, might spend 2 hours training in doing maybe skills, maybe conditioning work, whatever it is, depends on the time and stage of the season. The rest of their job, their full-time job, is eating and recovering. And it might be in swimming pools, it might be in jacuzzi pools, it might be getting physio. And some of these guys, these top level guys that you see performing, rugby union, rugby league, whatever it is, you know, footballers the same. They're in oxygen chambers to keep them going. They've got teams of sports scientists and chiropractors and physios working on them 24/7. And we haven't got that luxury. We've got, maybe some of us have got someone close to us that can give us a nice massage, or we've got a foam roller, or we've got those things to help us recover. You know, we're doing the best we can with the nutrition that we're working with, and with the recovery we're working with, and working it around jobs and working it around lives. And you know, it's all got to be the right stimulus at the right time and going steady on the progression. So what I'm hoping with this today is to actually take a little bit of pressure off thinking I've got to hammer it every single time. You know, and there's a time and a place for really pushing, and it's called overreaching, and that's to kind of attempt to get to a new level. But it doesn't have to be every single time you set foot in the gym or go out for a run. You know, we need to enjoy these things as well, not get injured, so we can keep on doing it consistently. So that's why I was encouraging us to think about getting 1% better, not big jumps all the time of this week I'm going to do 2 extra sessions. Do you know what? Actually, if you do the same number of sessions and make them in one way or another a tiny bit more intense with that little bit of progression, that little maybe some bits are going faster, maybe some bits are increasing the weight, some bits are increasing the reps, but only small amounts. I've done, dread to think, not even dread to think, on average in the gym when it's open, I'll probably work out 5 times a week. I'll probably get 1 or 2 exercises per week that I improve on. That's it. And that might not even happen every week. And it's usually because someone's there to spot me, support me, encourage me to get that extra push. But just going through the process and keeping going to where I was is going to keep me going. Just looking for those little increments of improvement. So I hope you can see where you can get that little increase across what you're doing, and I hope you can think, actually, do what, I'm going to increase there, or I'm not going to worry too much about doing more and more and more. I used to really want to always increase my squat and increase my deadlift and increase different exercises. I've come to a place now, I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser, where actually if the timing's right, if everything comes together really well, I've had a good rest and recovery prior, I've had the right nutrition, I'm in a really good place, then I might attempt something big on that particular day. But otherwise, if it doesn't 100% feel it, it's there. If it's a day when I'm a little bit tired, kids have been up in the night, all those sorts of things, you're just going to have to ease in and just aiming for doing the best that you can day by day, step by step. That's what we're talking about, 1% progression. So we've touched on nutrition and we've touched on measurements and fitness tests. It'd be really cool if you're doing those, to get those in, get them over to me today or tomorrow. It'd be great. So I can just have a little look and hopefully help you progress again across this month. And then just thinking about training and easing that kind of pressure to always be bashing away and getting better and better and better. We want that, but it's going to take time, it's going to take patience, and 1% at a time improvement. And sometimes it is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We might get a real good increase one day, and then we'll have to come back a little bit before we get the next step up. That's absolutely fine as well. So I hope you're having a good week. Monday started well, and I'm going to jump off now and get some dinner. And any questions, any support around training, progression, and just that steady increase of effort, intensity and consistency, please give me a shout. Have a good one. Speak to you soon.